Hello, James here. Um, you ever heard of a dictionary called Merriam-Webster? Well, there's a certain term that I gotta show you that I'm gonna play a video with it, but I gotta give you a certain term. Okay, what does that term mean? Offensive paragraph below used insulting contemptuous term for a black person, right? Offensive used to insulting. Then it goes down to number three. Often use the paragraph below as a member of a class, a group of people who are systematically subjected to discrimination, unfair treatment. It's time for somebody to lead all American N-words, all the people who left out of the political process. This terminology, Nigger, is an infamous word in the current English so much that when the people are called upon to discuss it, they may often not refer to it as I can't say that name, as the N-word. Since this 1 and 2, the word ranks almost certainly the most offensive and inflammatory racial slur in the English, a term expressive of hatred and bigotry. Since it's three is also known, rarely use it often to consider offensive. The word self-referential used by and among black people are not always intended to taken as offensive, although many object to use as well. But it also used by a person who's not black to refer to black persons can only be regarded as deliberate oppression of contemptuous racism. Did you know that the definition of NIGG changed? The widespread belief that the original meaning of NIGGER as defined in dictionaries was an ignorant person, and related belief that the current dictionary definition describing it uses hateful, racist epithet are a recent change. We do not know the source of those beliefs, but we are not current. The word was first included in Merriam-Webster's dictionary in 1864. At the time, it was defined as a symptom of Negro, which is a note indicating it was used as derision of the depreciation. There was never been a definition like an ignorant person for this word. It was substantially dictionary published by this company, nor we do not such have been earlier. There's other terms for it. Niger, from the Middle French, Niger, from Spanish, Portuguese, Negro, from Negro, the black, to Latin, Niger. So now, I saw something that really stand out what this man said. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to kind of use some of his video, but I had to give an introduction into that. With these couple of videos I want to use, but I had to give the definition of the word. I'm gonna use it one time, YouTube nigger. So I'm going. Just the last time you're gonna hear me here, and why it was. I'm saying it as a teaching moment. As a teaching moment, and then you're gonna have an idea why some people of other races use that word against black people, and he's gonna break this down. But this is for educational purposes. And why and it gives you a question, why do people use this word? What's the big deal about the word? Why do we refine the word? Why is it used? Why it's a borderline between using it as a slang among black people by redefining the word, but it's offensive when a white person uses it. Good question. But racism, when that word was used so much, it went into the psychic of black people. And it's almost like it was a word, like it was like witchcraft. Like this, we don't put a word has a lot of meaning to it. A word to label a people. And so it means an ignorant person. And I remember a white person told me this a long time ago. That's what it really means. And why they use the word. But they use it particularly for a category of people who are dark. And that's subconsciously people do that. It's geared for that. So anybody use that word, oh boy. Well, we don't. I'm going to tell the versions of it.
This message is vital to your survival on planet Earth.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Well, I want to say to you all that a little knowledge goes a long way, right? Just a little bit of knowledge. Now, I remember there was something that happened many years ago. There was a spelling bee and it had a lot of people upset and bothered. Now, although there may have been some toying around with it, both by the people that were participating and those after the fact. The truth of the matter is, when you look up the etymology of certain words, it might take you back to something very, very surprising, right? Something very surprising. Now, Sister Monica shared this, but I remember the spelling bee from many years ago, and a lot of people were chopping the video up and doing certain editing to it, showing the surprised looks on their faces when the word was being spelled at a spelling bee by a Caucasian child, right? So anyway, I want you all to, first, before I show that clip, I want you all to see what it actually means. Negus, right? Negus or negus, right? I want you to see what it actually means, and then I'll show you the clip that had a lot of people hot and bothered. Here's the clip. I'm sorry, not the clip, but the meaning. So when you look up the word, of course, the first meaning you're going to see, it says a hot drink or port, sugar, lemon, and spices, right? A hot drink of port, sugar, lemon, and spices. But when you look up the origins, right? Look, this has right here, negus. Negus is the plural, a ruler or the supreme ruler of Ethiopia. Then right here, Ingus is king, right? Ingus, king, or Negus, a ruler or the supreme ruler of Ethiopia. Now, it was also another person's name, right? It was another person's name, but the origins of the name, right here, Ingus, meant king. All right, so over time, it kind of developed into other things, but it started off meaning something else, a ruler or the supreme ruler of Ethiopia. And when you get a bunch of neguses together, you have rulers, right? That's what the plural stands for, right there, neguses, right? Okay, so now that we've gotten that part taken care of, you can see how over time, words kind of change meanings and they change hands. And then you have people that begin to use things that are similar but spelled different, sound the same, blah, 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 right? And so over time, when you look at that word, a lot of people take offense to it because of how it was used by some very, very ignorant people, right? And so you find people who get upset and bothered by it. And I've told you all, I've been called that before. I've been called that at a young age. I was a teenager when I was first called that, right? Then I was called that as an adult. All of this happened in Michigan. And so, again, the way ignorant people use it, they use it, of course, spelling differently, sounding a little different, but you can see how the sound can be related somehow. So ignorant people used it ignorantly, not knowing that the origins of the word means something very stately, something very regal, something very prominent, right? Ruler or rulers in the plural. So I want you to see the clip where the young boy was spelling this at a spelling bee, and how it seems like they wanted him to keep on pronouncing it, almost as if, a lot of people thought that they were doing that trying to be funny or whatever. But again, they were inadvertently saying what our people were, rulers, right? Rulers. Rulers. Take a listen, and I'll be right back.
Negus.
Negus. What is the language of origin?
Ethiopian to Amharic.
What is the definition?
A king. It's used as a title of the sovereign of Ethiopia. Negus.
Negus. Could you use it in a sentence?
The Negus ruled Ethiopia until the coup of 1974.
Negus. Could you repeat the definition?
A king. It's used as a title of the sovereign of Ethiopia. Negus.
Negus.
And would you say the word loudly for the judges?
Negus.
One more time.
Negus.
Negus.
Negus. Negus. Negus.
Absolutely stunned, but he'll take it. Again, when in doubt, sound it out. Spell it just like it sounds, and it pays off every once in a while.
When in doubt, sound it out. I'll have to remember that.
So, what I find interesting is sometimes people will try to insult you, but they don't realize that they are calling you something else. You know, it was meant as an insult, it was meant to demean, but they were stating something that is prophesied for the future, right? So, what is a negus again? N-E-G? U.S.? Historically, it was a ruler, a king. Interesting. Interesting. So this is why I say when folk get all in their feelings and they let that, that H-A-T-R-E-D boil up in them for no reason at all other than the fact that they are seeing someone with melanated skin and they get all hot and bothered in that flesh of theirs, don't you get hot and bothered, right? Don't you get hot and bothered. Just remember that our people at one time were niggas, and that they will be niggas again according to biblical prophecy. You hear what I'm saying? Don't get hot and bothered anymore. Let the ignorant stay ignorant, because they're using it out of a form of ignorance. So let them stay ignorant. And you just handle your business and walk away. Don't let it get under your skin. You know, if you feel the need, if it's not a dangerous situation, just say, you know what, I hope that made you feel better calling me that. I know your parents are probably proud of you. You got that off your chest. I hope because you got it off your chest, that makes you feel like a big man or a big woman. But, just so you know, you just called me a ruler or a king. Alright? So anyway, in most cases I would just simply say ignore them, you know, because you ain't trying to get nothing stirred up. So just walk away. You know, just walk away. Let them stew in their ignorance. But you remember what niggas mean, right? Alright, I'm done, y'all. Chop it up in the comment section. As all.
Oh, whoop, wrong one.
What's going on, family? Jarrell.
Oops, sorry. Wrong one. Oh, wrong one. Really interesting outtake of that.
Are you tired of damaging, antiquated pressure washing? Pressure washing is over 100-year-old technology. It only strips away.
I have a question. Why do whites hate blacks generally? So, I use the word generally because I'm not speaking or asking this question from an individual perspective. Because I'm not asserting, nor am I asking whether every white person hates blacks, but whites generally, whites holistically, whites as a whole, white society. Why does white society, why do whites hate blacks? Now, for those of you who will deny that it's true that whites generally hate blacks, the proof is in the pudding. There's no way to deny it. So hang around. I want to talk about that for a few minutes. So yeah, don't even waste my time with it's not true. I mean, it is true. We have exhibit after exhibit after exhibit after exhibit. And we're going to get into that. Let's have a serious dialogue. I want you to answer me in the comments as well. And again, the question is, why do whites hate blacks generally? That is the question that I'm asking. I'll give you time to think about it. And this is a question only for intellectually honest people. Not trolls, but people who are ready and willing to have a serious dialogue on this question. It's a question I don't think America has ever asked. We've never had a serious dialogue about this. Again, why do whites hate blacks generally? Now, let's start with the definition of hate. What do I mean when I say hate? Hate, defined by Merriam-Webster definition, is an intense hostility and aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or sense of injury. So when I say hate, I'm using the Merriam-Webster dictionary's definition. An intense hostility and aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or a sense of injury. It could also be extreme dislike or disgust, antipathy, or loathing. I mean, those are strong words, but they describe what we have seen coming from white people toward black folks generally over many years. Where does this come from? What is it in white culture that brings about this type of hatred? If we can ever get an answer to this, have a serious discussion about this, maybe we can see how to deconstruct that hatred. So I'm raising the question. Again, please feel free. In fact, I encourage you, I want you to comment about this video. All right? Now, why whites hate blacks? So here's some reasons that I offer as a reason why whites hate blacks generally. Number one, a justification for greed. Now, I gotta look to scripture on this because I'm a Christian. I'm an attorney, but I'm also a Christian. In fact, I'm a minister. So I gotta go to the scripture for answers. I'm not gonna look to psychologists or anthropologists or the such. I'm gonna go to the source of creation. All right, God. And so in the Bible, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10 says what I believe is the number one reason why whites hate blacks. For the love of money is a root of all evil. It is through this craving that some have been led astray and have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves through with many acute mental pangs. So, the first reason I believe whites hate blacks is to justify greed. If you believe the Bible, I certainly do, it says the love of money is the root of all evils. Hatred is an evil. So the root of that hatred, according to scripture, is a love of money. And we can so clearly see that because there's one thing that blacks, Africans have that whites not only crave but need, and that's all those natural resources on the continent of Africa. A lot of the continent of Europe does not have all of those resources and wealth. So Europeans saw all this wealth on the continent of Africa where African people derive from. And they, because of greed, because of a love of money, desired that. And then they justified it with hate and racism. In other words, we can take what these people got. We can take it because they are inferior, because they are less than human, because they are heathens, savages. So because they are less than human, because they are savages, because they are heathens, we can take from them. We can kill them. We can colonize them. We can enslave them. Because, I mean, this is the way God created things. This is the natural order of things. So it is not a violation of anything for us to take what they got, kill them in the process, and use it for our own personal benefit. So the first reason is a justification for greed. That's where a lot of the hatred comes from. Because again, scripture says the love of money is the root of all evil. So hate is an evil. What is the root of that hate? Greed. The love of money. What else? Satanic influence. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12 gives us some insight here.
These days, visual
it says, "For we are not wrestling with flesh and blood, contending only with physical opponents," in other words, humans, "but against the despotisms, against the powers, against the master spirits who are the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spirit forces of wickedness in the heavenly supernatural sphere." So this tells us that the fight that we see between whites, blacks, and any other group actually is really coming about because of the influence of demonic forces in the unseen world. So demonic forces influence people to hate other people. So the fight that we African Americans and Africans around the world have with whites, it's really demonic forces that are behind this fight. It's really those demonic forces that brings about the hatred that whites have generally against blacks. Now, if you say that it's not true that whites generally hate blacks, just hang on. I'm gonna prove that whites generally hate blacks. So, number one, it's a justification for greed. That's where the hate comes from, according to 1 Timothy 6:10. And it comes from satanic demonic influence, according to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Where else? Twisted racist theology. Twisted racist theology. There are verses in the Bible that whites used way back in history to once again justify the hatred of black people, the oppression, the enslavement of black people. Twisted racist scriptures. Genesis chapter 9, verse 20 through 26. "And Noah began to cultivate the ground, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and became drunk, and he was uncovered, and lay naked in his tent." So at this time, there were only 8 people on the planet. Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their 3 wives. This was after the great flood. So Noah, after this flood, essentially got intoxicated. And Ham, the father of Canaan, glanced at and saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. So Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it upon the shoulders of both, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. So let me explain. Again, there were only 8 people on the planet. Noah and his wife, their 3 sons, and their 3 wives. Their 3 sons were Shem, Ham, Japheth. Ham is the progenitor of the black race. Shem is the progenitor of the Semitic people, the Jewish people. And Japheth is the progenitor of European people. All people on the planet descended from one of these 3 people. Shem, Ham, or Japheth. Blacks descended from, again, Ham, and specifically from Ham's son, Cush. So when Noah awakened from his drunkenness, he was angry with Ham for seeing him naked, and he cursed Ham's son, Canaan. Notice he didn't curse Cush, he cursed Canaan. And the African people and the African diaspora are descendants of Cush. We're Cushite people. So the curse was not pronounced on us. Yet, European people began to propagate the lie that the curse of Canaan covered all black people. And consequently, it was biblically acceptable to enslave, to oppress, to hate, and to treat black folks the way black folks have been treated for many years. All because of a twisted, racist interpretation of these scriptures. But once a lie is told and gets into the psyche of people, that lie is very difficult to break because, again, it just gets into the psyche of culture and is then propagated. And folks end up hating people based on some lie that was told, racist, twisted lie that was told many years ago, thousands of years ago. And you ask them, why do you hate this person? You don't even know this person. Why do you hate him? And they oftentimes, if they were being honest, would just say, well, that's what I was taught to do. That's what I heard my daddy say. That's what my granddaddy said. That's what my mother said. That's what I heard. That's what I seen. That was a part of my family, and they heard it and seen it from their family. And you go all the way back to this lie. Huge lie. Racist lie that has justified so much wrongdoing toward African American, the entire African diaspora. All right, what else? Let's keep looking. I'm offering you what are, again, the reasons that I identify for why whites generally hate black people. And then there's a fear of black people. A fear, because we read from Merriam-Webster's dictionary, right here, hate, defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is an intense hostility and aversion usually deriving from fear, anger, a sense of injury. So hate oftentimes is born out of fear. Fear. And so there's a fear of African people. Fear that African people will rise up one day and seek vengeance. A fear that if the continent of Africa ever became free, then Europeans would not have this vast source of wealth to steal and pillage and to take through colonialism. A fear. So we got to keep these people down. We got to keep oppressing these people. We got to keep these folks fighting one another. We got to keep these folks traumatized, because otherwise we fear that they will rise up and either take vengeance for all the stuff we've done to them, or they will just begin to start demanding that we treat them fairly. That's fear. So I offer to you a few reasons for this hatred. Again, they are a justification for greed, because we saw in the scripture that the love of money is the root of all evil. Satanic influence, because we see in scripture when two people are at war with each other, there is demonic, satanic influence in the unseen world that's bringing that about. Twisted racist theology, the twisting of the story of Noah and his 3 sons and grandsons. And last of all, fear. Fear of what would happen if the African American, the African person, the African continent, especially sub-Saharan Africa, is ever liberated. What that would do to Europe, the impact that would have on the continent of Europe. Because again, this wealth that Europe has robbed from the continent of Africa for hundreds of years, even predating slavery, before slavery began, before colonialism, Europe was taking advantage of Africa with all kinds of unfair trading. And then they just got the bright idea, instead of unfair trading with the continent, with these black people, let's just take over the continent. And it was during the Conference of Berlin in 1883, 1884, they decided to just carve the continent of Africa up and take it, and therefore take the resources. And so colonialism was eventually defeated, But a new form of colonialism began. And this is where Europeans began to use corrupt African leaders to continue robbing Africa through those corrupt leaders. We're seeing that now. Now, I told you, I was going to show you, prove to you, with solid proof, that whites generally, holistically, hate blacks for the 4 reasons that I gave you. What proof might I have? Well, number 1, colonialism. That's rooted in hatred. That's rooted in greed. The atrocities that the European people committed against African people, African nations, to colonize that continent is rooted in all those things that we said. Fear, hatred, greed, racist theology. But what else? Slavery. Slavery. 246 years of chattel slavery here in America. And chattel slavery is the worst type of slavery. It's where, under the law, a person is not even considered a person, but property, with no rights. No rights whatsoever. None. Stripped of all humanity and decency. That is hatred. That's satanic. That's demonic. That's greed. That's fear. Lynchings. Rapes. You see all of the mixed race African American people here. It is the result of the rapes, the child molestations that European people visited upon African people after they arrived here. I've been to the continent of Africa. I've been in Ghana at the point of no return and was told the story of how the European slave traders would pick out the young women as they were entering that castle there, the point of no return, and would pick them out for rape. And of course the plantation owners, once they arrived to America, just completely had total, absolute control over young women, children of them. Thomas Jefferson essentially was raping a black child. You're under the law. I'm an attorney. Under the law, you cannot say that a child consents to sexual relations. A child cannot consent. And I think her name was Sally Hemingway, I believe. 15, 16 years old. She couldn't consent to having sex with that grown man, Thomas Jefferson, and gave birth to multiple children. That's evil. Hateful.
Go look at my video. I did this series about that.
I'm giving you proof. Jim Crow. After slavery was abolished, the 13th Amendment, which was, we celebrated actually the anniversary of the ratification of the 13th Amendment just 4 days ago, December 13th, 1865. So I think it was like 185 years ago. My math could be off. But after slavery was abolished, hateful whites created another system called Jim Crow. And the intent of Jim Crow was to basically keep black people in a state of de jure slavery, if you will. To keep black folks in a continued state of
Sorry for the cutoff.
Genome lacking. This is coming from Aaron Elhink, an Ashkenazi Jewish geneticist. geneticist. It reads, Aaron Elhake, a geneticist at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, thinks so. In a recently published study in Genome Biology Evolution, he is calling for a rewrite of commonly held assumptions about Jewish ancestry. Instead of being primarily the descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel, present-day Jewish populations are, finds Elhake, primarily the children of a Turkish people who lived in what now is Russia, north of Georgia, east of Ukraine. This civilization, the Khazars, converted from tribal religions to Judaism between the 7th and 9th centuries. The controversy cut into Elhake's works runs deep, far past the lab bench. Among some circles, his conclusions are bound to be unpopular. This is the first scientific paper to prove the Khazarian hypothesis and reject the Rhineland hypothesis, he says, and with it about 40 years of research. Although his findings will not be welcome in all circles, Elhake's interest is more medical than political. All I want is to help my colleagues who are studying genetic disorder, he says. I hope this work will open up a new era in genetic studies where population stratification will be used more. Let's highlight another point of this article. Previous studies had, for example, combined the question of similarity among and between Jewish populations and the question of ancestry and relatedness to non-Jewish populations. Elhake viewed these questions separately. Jewish communities are less homogeneous than is popularly thought, he says, with Jewish communities along the former Khazarian border showing the most heterogeneity. His second question centered on ancestry. When comparing Jewish communities to their non-Jewish neighbors, Caucasus or Levant, in other words, Middle Eastern populations, which is the closest to Jews. All Eurasian Jewish communities are closer to Caucasus populations, he writes, with Central European Jews closer to Italian non-Jews as the exception. Not one of the 8 evaluated Jewish populations were closer to Levant populations. Let me read that again. Not one of the 8 evaluated Jewish populations were closer to Levant populations. So I want to say this again. Not a single Negro or African group was included in any of their testing. And again, when I say their testing, I am referring to the Israeli geneticists. They were very selective of the Eurasian people groups they chose in an attempt to manipulate or control or dictate their expected output.
Here's another line of echelon that I've seen banging around the crankiest parts of the internet, or the most anti-Semitic parts of the internet, saying that no, Ashkenazi Jews, they're not Jews. They are genetically derived from a nation that was formed sometime in, I think it's 700 or 800 AD in kind of the central part of what is today Russia. Show me the science. Show me the proof. If you can't, then just go away. But I understand you won't. I know you won't, because nobody ever does. All they do is say, I saw it on the internet, it's got to be true. But, okay, show me.
First, let me, when you see Ashkenazi Jews sharing high similarity to Romanians and Hungarians, this is because both of these populations were offshoots of the Khazars. They were both founded by these members of the Caucasus who ruled this area of north of the Black Sea, where we have South Russia nowadays. Between the 7th and 13th centuries. Very powerful empire. They converted to Judaism in the 8th century, and they sent offshoots to Eastern Europe. And we still, some Ashkenazi Jews are mapped to this region of Ukraine. They're not all mapped to Ashkenaz. Most of them are, but some of them are mapped to Ukraine, and we can see very nicely some kind of migration route using GPS.
In an interview that Benaya Israel and myself did with Ashkenazi Jewish geneticist Aaron Elhig, I asked him to explain genetic distances. Now, before I play that clip of him explaining and answering my question, I want to just give you a little understanding about genetic distances. This is coming from a book titled The Origin of Ashkenazi Jewry. And I want to encourage you guys, if you want to get kind of like a crash course on the history of the Ashkenazi Jewish community, I encourage you guys to purchase this book. So again, the book is titled The Origin of Ashkenazi Jewry. Now we're going to focus on genetic distances. It reads, a large part of the study was devoted to the determination of genetic distances between the different populations. Through this method, genetic markers from different Jewish populations are compared. The smaller the relationship, the more differences in DNA may have arisen. Such differences are called distances. 75 Caucasian, in other words, white populations based on 9 markers. The genetic distance analysis showed that East European Jews were closest to the inhabitants of Thrace, the region shared by Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. Bulgarian Jews came next, followed by 36 non-Jewish populations, and only then the second Jewish population, the Iranian Jews. Other results showed a large Italian component in the gene pool. In other words, total variety of genes in a population of the East European Jews. From all these results, it appears genetically the different Jewish communities do not have much in common. Often, they appear to be more related to the population in the midst of which they live. In other words, when its genetic material was available.
The second question you asked was genetic drift. Genetic drift is when we have these mutations that are by chance, that are random, and they accumulate over time. Now, the more time passes, the more of these mutations accumulate. And if a tribe moves from one place to another, 2 things can happen. They can maintain marriage within that tribe, in which case they will preserve the original signature of the first tribe that they left, and allows us to make connection between these two. The second thing, they can start mixing with the local environment, like almost always happens, and then they will for a while show a mixed signature. And then depends on the level of mixture, they will start moving toward the hosting tribe. But if we're looking at the first strategy, if they maintain marriage within the tribe, over very, very long time, they will not be identical to the original tribe anymore because of this accumulation of random mutations that only happen in this tribe, but not in the original tribe. It happened in the original tribe too, but different random process. So they're not going to be identical, and over time, they're just going to be split. Now, the extension of these splits depends on how much time has passed. And that's genetic drift. Now, in the populations that we're talking about, Ashkenazic Jews, that we're looking at 1,000 years, that's not enough time for random drift to create completely separate things. However, you mentioned it, and that's very good because it's a chance to refute another myth. Random drift has been used to explain why Ashkenazic Jews are different. When you compare them to the Palestinians, they don't look like Palestinians. When you compare them to English, they don't look like English. So they said, oh yeah, they because they married each other, random drift took its shot and created this unicorn. That's not true. They're just not being compared to the right populations where they came out. If you compare them to the population we mentioned, these Southern Europeans, Turkish populations, you will see much higher similarity. Genetic drift does not act so quickly.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, because when I did some research on it, it was according to the numbers and basically that formula that was laid out, it can take anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 years for that, I guess, whatever that mutation to become a permanent marker. So yeah, you answered the question, and the other question was about the Kohanim, because that for me didn't really make sense. If all the sons share the same father, how can one son, why mutation be different, especially from the other brothers? So I just had a question on that as well.
Exactly. First, if I may say, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You're on top of the fields, and I take great pleasure in discussing with you and answering your questions. Let's say that you're on the beach and you see people with bathing suits. Some are red, some are yellow, some are white, some are purple with red stripes. You're going to ask all these people, who are you guys? How come you're the only one with purple and red stripes and everybody else are, plain colors? They're like, we're from this city, Beersheba, that's where I am. We all shop at the same store. They're the only one who has it. How interesting. Let me take your DNA. You're gonna take their DNA, you're gonna also sample the other bathing suits. Other bathing suits are from all over Israel, okay? We have only one Mediterranean Sea, everybody are going there. They're gonna come from everywhere. The people who are wearing the purple and red striped suit will be much more similar to each other than all the other ones, just because the cities in Beersheba are sort of organized by ethnicity, sort of. And then you're gonna come up and say, hey, look, the orange and red stripes bathing suit wearers have all common origin. Some ancestors who probably invented this bathing suit. How exciting! This is exactly how the Levite study was done. And with the beach example, I was not exaggerating. They went to the beach and they sampled people with that surnames. They once again compared it to English. They saw that all the people with the Levite do not share the same DNA. They don't. A third of them did. They decided that those third must represent the Levite because they all share. That does not mean that. That means they all have some kind of common origin. Perhaps we can agree on that. But it does not mean they all have one Levite ancestor. What about the other ones? You have 66% of the people who do not match. But this majority of evidence was dismissed in favor of the much cooler and much small sample size. There's things that happen, unfortunately, often in science. And then the whole Levite legend was born.
I'm white. I'm white. Unseasoned. Caucasian. Caucasian. Caucasian.
Today, it is prohibited, and you can Google this, to do a DNA test in Israel. Totally forbidden. Wrong. It's illegal. It's a crime. You'll be jailed if you do a DNA test in Israel. Why?
So when did the Jewish community become a race? Let me ask that again. When did the Jewish community become a race? Is a Jew or Jewish a race? This is coming from a Jewish publication called The Forward, and this is an article they wrote back in 2017. The title of this article is, Can 23andMe tell us if Jews are a race, and is that a good thing? Written by Ari Feldman, and again, July 30th, 2017. And it reads, Can 23andMe tell us if Jews are a race, and is that a good thing? Learning your genetic makeup has never been easier than it is in 2017. For less than the cost of a doctor's visit, some people are trying to use the service to find out if or to what extent they're Jewish, a phenomenon that worries historians and scientists. Buyers of mail-order gene testing kits do get solid information from them. They learn where their ancestors were living 9 generations ago. Some have even found living but long lost family members. The danger, experts say, is that in relying on these kits to learn more about their genes, users are perpetrating the notion that Jews are a race, a concept they say has no scientific basis. So again, users are perpetrating the notion that Jews are a race, a concept they say has no scientific basis. Is this quote true? Let's confirm this by going to Anthropology Newsletter, The Origin of the Idea of Race by Audrey Smedley, who is a world-renowned anthropologist, November 1999. And it reads, contemporary scholars agree that race was a recent invention and that it was essentially a folk idea, not a product of scientific research and discovery. This is not new to anthropologists.
Then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race. No. It's not about race. It's about a different race. But it's not about race. It's not about race. What is it about? Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. That's what it's about.
But it's about white supremacy.
It's not about race. But these are two white groups of people.
So let's go back to the forward. Can 23andMe tell us if Jews are a race? And is that a good thing? It reads, the idea of race has historically slotted humans into a handful of categories: Asian, African, white, etc. But research has shown that there can be as much genetic differences within these races as between them. And experts say the notion that one skin tone and facial features alone can predict social behavior is plain wrong. It's really important for all of us to resist the attempt to revive this discredited notion that race is a biological category rather than a political and social category, said Marcy Darnowski, director of the Center for Genetics and Society, a not-for-profit scientific ethics group. Now, these are some of the examples that this article posted of Ashkenazi Jews who use 23andMe to confirm their ethnicity, to confirm what race they belong to. This is a post by Jonathan Paul. Mine came back and basically told me I am extremely white. Mine is a bit of Ashkenazi Jewish heritage, which is kind of dope because Gal Gadot, and that's the actress who played Wonder Woman. And here's another example they used by Abigail Jaffe. It says, I am 98% Ashkenazi, says 23andMe, and 99.7% European. That is white. And someone responded to her from within the Ashkenazi community, posted this: I am Ashkenazi Jew, and I'm most definitely not a person of color. Never thought I'd have to clear that up, but then they post a link to blogs.timesofisrael.com, which is another Jewish publication. This article made an attempt to say that the Ashkenazi Jewish community, they are a people of color. And then they highlighted actors and actresses and famous people from within that community. They photoshopped, in other words, they toned down their appearance to make them appear to be people of color. I'll post a link inside the description box. So again, resist the attempt to revive this discredited notion that race is a biological category rather than a political and social category. So let's skip down to another part of this article. It reads, Ashkenazi Jews often find themselves in the peculiar situation of being 90% Ashkenazi Jewish and 99% European. Sephardic Jews may be told they are mostly Middle Eastern and North African, and less than 10% Ashkenazi. Stuart Schaufman, a travel writer and blogger who writes under the name, and I'm not going to pronounce the full name because of the vulgarity, but Broke Blank Stewart, said he brought a kid from 23andMe because even though his family insists they're exclusively Jewish, he thought there was a possibility that he had some non-Jewish ancestry. I was curious because you never know, said Schaufman. Family stories are just stories. Schaufman, who learned that he is 99.8% Ashkenazi Jewish, said the test hasn't made much of a difference. on his sense of Jewish identity. Judaism really informed who I am and my values and my worldview, Schaufman said. 23andMe hasn't made me more or less Jewy at all. I'm just Jewy.
Does having Jewish DNA determine your Jewish status? Great question. The answer is your Judaism is determined by your mother. If your mom's Jewish, you're Jewish according to traditional Judaism. Now, you can have a very high count of Jewish DNA, and that's awesome. That means you're connected to the Jewish people, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're Jewish. Don't forget, there are people that convert to Judaism and they have zero DNA and they're 100% Jewish.
Judaism really informed who I am and my values and my worldview, Schaufman said. 23andMe hasn't made me more or less Jewy at all. I'm just Jewy. However, Schaufman added he's Jewy and white, while other Jews, Sephardic Jews, Ethiopian Jews, can't claim that distinction. He's an ethnic minority, but a white one nonetheless. I get all the benefits of white privilege, he acknowledged. And again, this is why DNA testing is forbidden in Israel. This is why an assertive effort by the Israeli community to have 23andMe remove the Khazarian connection to the Ashkenazi Jews.
Well, thank you, Pastor Kelly, for enlightening us with that truthful information. Well, you know, hey, truth is true. And we are in the last days, ladies and gentlemen. And truth is coming forward. Well, I also want to mention what the older gentleman was saying, not only that it was hatred, but jealousy. There's a sense of jealousy that white supremacy taught other groups of people to be subjected to the people who were African-looking descent, that were dark complected by their skin. When you go over in different parts of the world, you see that there's a stereo and stigmatite. And where you see places like Spain, Italy, and you go to places, even some place like India, you go to some places in South America, white supremacy dominate in that sense an evil part, and it put the chain of command on skin complexion. Because now, when I did videos, you had different people talking about they feel like they were, subjugated. They had darker skin. This thing is deeper than what it is. It's spiritual. And even though in America and Europe and different places this happened here, but just because of melanin in the skin, both psychologically think that oppressive, poor, ignorant, and less class. And it's deeper. That's why I said it's deep rooted. It's everything is connected spiritually, and the brother laid it out. But even this thing with these people, they controlled the information. The last video, they controlled what we were supposed to learn. They were part of it. We were part of the people. What did the blacks were going to learn? And I can show you in another video. They were over the blacks the whole time. And they collaborate with other groups of people to keep us dumbed down. And that's what they did. And one of the groups that they're fighting today over in the Middle East, they collaborated with them. This is the reason why there's racism. This is the reason why there's prejudice. Because it was taught. And it was looked down upon among these different groups. And these groups of individuals as in the races. Racism transformed. Spiritually transformed. And he brought it out. Enough said. But I just wanted to play this video to confirm to you that there's always been someone that say that they're your friend for black people, but really there's a fold to it. Some people individually were friends, but a lot of foes. A lot of people wasn't black people's friend. So I hope this is educational. Share, like, and subscribe. Now you know the truth. Now you can see the whole thing and wondering why we've always been divided. It goes back to jealousy. Alright then, you guys, take care. Be blessed. See you on the next video. And educate the others. Take care.